The Linux kernel was started by Linus Torvalds in April of 1991 while he was still a student at the University of Helsinki in Finland. In October of the same year, Linus posted a message to the Minix news group on Usenet that he was starting a free operating system based on his kernel. After that, many people joined him in the effort. 3 years later, version 1.0 of the Linux kernel was released. In 1996, version 2.0 was released, and in 2003, version 2.6.0 was released. RHEL 6 is using the kernel from this branch with a multitude of patches and updates. As we already stated, the Linux kernel is the heart of the operating system. Since the kernel is the heart of the operating system, it is responsible for these tasks. First off, the kernel is responsible for the system startup, which we will elaborate on more in a later video. The kernel is also responsible for all of the system's process scheduling and priorities. All of the network functionality originates from the kernel. The system's memory management is coordinated by the kernel. And the system security is handled by the Linux kernel through the NetFilter firewall system, SE-Linux, and file and folder permissions. The Linux kernel's version numbering scheme is broken down into first the major kernel version, a dot, then the minor version, a dot, then the patch version. Redhat takes the version numbering further by including a dash, then the build number, followed by an EL number representing the version of Enterprise Linux that the kernel is for, a dot, and finally the CPU architecture. You can see what version of the kernel that you are currently using by running the uname-r command. Also, remember that when you go to update your system's kernel that you install a new one and not upgrade it, as an upgrade will overwrite your currently installed kernel. We discussed this issue in more depth in our video about updating the system kernel. The Linux kernel is a monolithic kernel. What that means is that the operating system is running in the kernel space. The Linux kernel loads device drivers and file system drivers from what are known as kernel modules, and these modules are loaded dynamically. That means that the only modules that are loaded are the ones that are needed for your particular hardware and system setup. You can see what kernel modules you have on your system by listing the contents of the lib modules directory. All of the kernels that you have installed on your system are going to be located in the /boot directory. The kernel names begin with VM-linux since the kernels are contained in a compressed image file that gets decompressed during the system boot process. When the system boots up, the kernel creates the /proc, /sys, and /dev directories. The /proc directory is where you will find the running system processes and any kernel parameters that you can modify. The /sys directory is where you will find your detected system devices and details about their device drivers. The /dev directory is where the access points for your devices are stored. This is what the file system uses when working with your system disk.